For your viewing pleasure, this broadcast of the Municipal Council meeting of Alpena is made possible by the funding provided by the City of Alpena. Thank you for your generosity.
Good evening and welcome to Alpena City Council meeting of March 3rd, 2014. Call the roll, please.
Johnson?
Here.
Nielsen?
Here.
Nowak?
Here.
Sexton?
Here.
Walagora?
Here. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, council had an opportunity to read the regular session, minutes from regular session February 17th, 2014, closed session February 17th, 2014, and special session of February 18th, 2014. No issues? Okay. As written. Any modifications to the agenda this evening? Okay, citizens appearing before council on agenda and non-agenda items shall be allowed 5 minutes to address the council with their concerns. This is the only time during the city council meeting that citizens are allowed to address council. We'll, of course, today being a little bit separate, we have a public hearing on water and sewer rates. So public comment for that will be separate later. But so basically, if you have any comments other than water and sewer that you'd like to present to council, please come up to the mic and state your name and address for our records. No one? Okay. The consent agenda this evening is bills to be allowed in the amount of $301,647.93, and B is a marina fee schedule amendments that were in our packet.
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Nielsen?
Yes.
Nowak?
Yes.
Sexton?
Yes.
Walagora?
Aye.
Johnson?
Yes.
Okay, with no announcements and no proclamations this evening, we'll go right to the public hearing, water and sewer rate increases. So I'll open the public hearing with a presentation from our city manager and city engineer.
And just a little bit tonight, a little bit different format because of the presentation. I need to use the laptop. I'm going to be doing it from the spare seat.
We're testing it.
Yeah, just testing. The city's been working on the various scenarios for water and sewer rate charges that have gone back into last summer. The city contracted with Gosling Zubeck to come in and analyze our rate structure to determine what would be appropriate, the methodology for setting the rates for our customers. And the results of that study were they came back with a process, rate-making process that we have utilized and followed. But their original proposal recommended that our rate structure be such that we would generate about $3.6 million in revenue to undertake the infrastructure needs that are identified within our 6-year capital improvement plan and carry us forward with improvements to our system. At that time, council did not feel that was viable for our citizens to absorb that type of a rate increase and recommended that we go back and reevaluate, look at what is the minimum that we would need to operate and maintain our system and do a portion of the capital improvements and the infrastructure improvements that are needed out there. Knowing that, the 3.6 million was unobtainable at that point in time. So we went back, developed a series of spreadsheets, ran numerous, and I would dare say well into the hundreds of different scenarios to try to determine what was palatable, or try to make it as palatable as possible to our citizens so that it wasn't going to break the bank, so to speak, but also provide the funding that we felt was needed to perform those basic needed improvements. With that, we developed what we're proposing tonight is the recommended rates for all customers of the city of Alpena. Basically, and this is an abbreviated version of the slide presentation that was presented at the last meeting and has been published on our city website. But the total revenue generated under the scenario we're proposing generates about $6.19 million in total revenue. Of that, we have estimated water expenses of about $2.1 million, estimated sewer expenses of about $2.12 million, total expenses about $4.3, leaving us our total available for maintenance and replacement of $1,952,000. Far less than the 3.6, but a target level that we feel that we can accomplish many of the improvements that we need. We certainly can't undertake them all. What we looked at is what the impact was to our residential customers. And we're making a change in the way we bill. We will be going to a monthly billing scenario. Customers will be billed monthly, and we are doing away with the minimum bill charge that existed under our old billing scenario. Basically, before, it was a quarterly bill every 3 months, and they would have to pay for 6,000 gallons as the minimum bill. As it turns out, about 21% of our customers are minimum bill customers, and of those, almost half of them are roughly 3,000. They're under 1,000 gallons a month. So what we looked at was to have the customer pay the individual, or pay in 1,000-gallon increments, starting with the first 1,000. So a residential customer who uses about 1,000 gallons a month would get a monthly bill of $26.14, or an equivalent, which would equate to a 3-month bill comparable to what they had of $78.42 before it was $60 and some change for that. And then we've done that for various scenarios all the way up through the normal customer use, 20,000 gallons a month, a quarter. Thank you, Greg. He's caught me on that a couple times. 20,000 gallons a quarter, mid-sized family. Their bill would be about $84.51 per month. This is what a typical monthly bill would look like. It would include a ready-to-serve charge, the billing charge, a commodity charge of $5.35 per 1,000 gallons, and the same thing for the water, a ready-to-serve charge, a billing charge, and a commodity charge of $4.95. $26.14 for a monthly bill, equivalent to the $78.42, and before they were $60.78 for that minimum bill customer. 12,000 gallons, a couple, maybe one child at home. Their monthly bill would be about $57. Equivalent bill of $171, where before they would have got an equivalent bill of $115.80. This is about a 47.8% increase. And the increases are relatively high, right around that 6,000, from 6,000 up until it flattens out at a little bit higher use. And that's as we're transitioning away from that 6,000 gallon minimum bill. It puts this anomaly in here that these folks in this category are a little bit higher increase than the balance. And then if we look at a 21,000 gallon per quarter customer, their bill's $87.94, equivalent quarterly bill of $263.82, and before they would have got a bill of $198.33, about a 33% increase. And as the use goes up, that percentage increase does decline. And one of the things that's been questioned is that there's all these new charges that are included in here. The billing charge, or excuse me, the ready to serve charge is a new charge. Basically, what we're doing is we're shifting that over so that there is a cost of the infrastructure to have that water and sewer service available to the property, and it is quite common. Most of the other communities that I surveyed did include a ready-to-serve charge. When we looked at those ready-to-serve charges, I think there was 29 or 39 communities that I looked at. We set our ready-to-serve charge significantly below the average of all those other ones, so we are below that.
Is that a month or a quarter?
That is a month.
Okay.
Billing charge, $2.92 for each water and sewer. Going with the monthly bill, the capabilities of accessing that online and the services that we can provide, those costs have increased. But this is basically replacing the customer service charge that existed before on the bill. The commodity charge is inclusive of both O&M and debt. Those are two things that are identified in our rate structure that we are utilizing. We've broken out the O&M, operation and maintenance cost, and the debt cost. Those before were rolled into our commodity charge for water and sewer. They were not broken out separately. This time we've broken them out separately, and that way we can show very transparent what we are charging for and what those costs are. Just, one of the things, and the township is a big customer. They presently are using about 43.16% of our water sales and 37.63% of our sewer sales. Under the proposed rate structure, the revenue generated through the township would generate about $2.126 million, representing about 34.35% of the total revenue stream in the utility, which is below the percentages of water and sewer which they are consuming. And then the big question is, where do our rates fall? Just as a comparison, Alpena, with our previous rates, was the third lowest. And that's one of the things, over the past many years, various councils have taken that as a point of pride, that we had some of the lowest water rates in the northern Michigan and eastern Upper Peninsula. And this is a report that's put together by Gosling Zubeck. They issue it, put it together independently, issue it to all their various customers. We grabbed a page out of their report and basically inserted where the city of Alpena would be with our proposed rate scenario. Like I said, we moved from 3rd to about 13th, and we are in that same range with East Tawas, Alpena Township, Tawas, Elk Rapids, Sault Ste. Marie. We're below Rogers City and Onaway as far as water rates go per for the rates themselves. A couple other questions that have come up that I think are key to hit on. We had a number of calls today, 2 or 3, that were questioning that the ready to serve charge, and a lot of it had to do with some of the buildings downtown that had a large fire suppression line come in to provide that fire suppression service. And they questioned on whether they would be charged a ready to serve charge based on that fire suppression line. That is not the case. Most of the fire suppression lines are not metered because they are only utilized for emergency purposes. But if they break off and use domestic service, often that it would go through a meter. And they would be based, the ready to serve charge would be based on that meter size. So they could have a 4, 6, 8-inch fire suppression line going into their building to service their fire suppression system. But if they only tee off 1.5 inches water service to service the domestic water supply within that building, the ready to serve charge would be based on that 1.5-inch meter or whatever meter size it happened to be. And that's the same as we presently have with Lafarge. A lot of the various industries have unmetered fire suppression lines that service them. So this is nothing new. This is the way it has always been done. But that was a point of concern. And just looking at it, the rates that we're proposing, I can't get it, go back. Right now, the city of Alpena's water rates are at $4.18. The commodity charge that we're proposing is $4.95, about a 77-cent per 1,000-gallon increase. Our sewer is presently billed at $4.99 per 1,000 gallons. Under this scenario, our commodity charge would be $5.35, about a 36-cent increase in those. So it is, when you look at the percentages on those bills, the 3 billing scenarios, it is higher than that, but part of that is that we've included that ready to serve charge. And the billing charge is separate, but it was separate before. So those do elevate those increases slightly because of those additional charges that, you see, the ready to serve was not there before. And with that, I will end my presentation.
I have a question, Rich. Have all the meters been changed out now? You're done with that, right?
Yeah, there are still a few of our large meter customers that were replaced shortly before. We try to replace those about every 5 years because of the volumes and a little bit of accuracy in those means quite a bit of flow. So we've changed it all the residential, in a portion of the commercial or larger meters, same style, remote read technology, but they're not all done. There's still a few of the old style out there that we have to physically read.
Thank you.
Do you have any comment? All right. We're going to have some discussion period a little bit later. Right now, I'd like to open it up to public comment. Just a couple of points before we start. If you would like to public comment, please come to the podium and state your name and address for our records. Be courteous, if you will. I understand that this is a bit emotional for some people, but if you could be courteous to us and our staff, we'd appreciate that. We may we don't normally make it a practice to respond to public comment immediately, but in light of today's topic, there may be a couple of opportunities where we might respond just to make some clarifications. So if you make a comment and you go sit down and we don't say anything, but we know that there's a clarification issue between what you said and what the facts are, we may respond to that. But I want to be careful to let you know in advance that we won't get in a debate with the public tonight, but we may respond to what you have to say as well. And the only other thing that I did notice that there are some elected officials this evening here with us. I'd like to, just for clarity with us and how we're going to be taking a lot of notes and could get into a bit of discussion, I'd like to have elected officials wait until, if they'd like to make some comment, wait until after residents have commented. And whether you're in the city or the township, it really doesn't matter at this point. But I think that would be best if anybody has an issue with that, let me know. But I'd rather have residents come up first, and then when we're all done with residents, if there are elected officials in the audience that would like to come up as well, then we'll entertain that as well. Business owners as well. Thanks. Yeah. So with that, if anyone would like to make a public comment, please come up and state your name and address, please.
My name is Ron Carpenter. I live in the city. I'm on Lake Avenue. And if you'll indulge me, I had to have a few notes here.
That's fine.
Saturday I got my water bill. It was $80 for 8,000 gallons. And on the comparison chart on the website that the city has, I'm going to pay $130. You know, and the presentation was made to the council prior in the minutes that these increases were going to be, I think, misleading between 29 and 48%. And I think it's misleading because the $30 ready-to-serve fees, I feel as though that's a raise also. So that percentage is rather misleading beyond being aggressive. That is going to raise my water bill 62.5%. No matter how you slice it or categorize it, I can't go in and pay a ready-to-serve fee. Or I can't go in and just say, well, I'm going to pay my sewer bill today. I have to pay the whole thing. You can make it look any way you want, but the facts are the facts, and the numbers don't lie. My bill's going to go up 62.5%. And I only use 8,000 gallons. My wife and I are retired. I don't think my Social Security is going to go up 62%. There's a definite need to address how we do business in the sewer and water area. I'd like to propose one thing, if I might, at this time. It's along this same vein. I'd like somebody to revisit the privatization versus public control of our water system. At face value, you're paying corporate income from our operating to them. Investors want growth on their investment in these firms, so they must be getting something. And if it's a break even, potentially, maybe we'll get a job or two back in Alpena that could oversee the very capable employees that we have. That's just a suggestion. I'm sure there are many more out there by people that are far more educated than me, but I think we got to start doing this and looking at how we spend our money. More money is not always the right answer. I strongly urge council and staff to research this topic of privatization of water and sewer lines and sewer systems. There's many, I read articles 3/4 of the day Sunday, and they made some very strong cases, but the overview that I walked away with, in the end, they're more expensive to run than public facilities for the people that own them. You've got sprawl, where you leapfrog over sparsely populated areas, and these people make money by plugging more people in that's beyond that sprawl, so you're leapfrogging beyond people. And since we've had privatization, I've seen very little people beating their chest as to the worthiness of having it. But this is an aside that can be discussed, and it's just an idea. I'd like to see ideas come from other people beyond more money. Maybe there could be an independent study as to worthiness of one versus the other. We pay for independent studies all the time as other things we do. It's only my idea. Okay, more money is not always the right answer, especially with such an enormous amount for a vague explanation. I'm not in favor of giving people this amount of raise or monies. I mean, I'm sure they're well-intentioned and they've put some effort into this. I don't mean to slight anybody here. But one of the explanations in the minutes on the Alpena website was for ongoing operations and parts replacement. You know, and we gotta maintain a system. Sure we do. You know, in the future. 38 years I've lived in the same house. My wife and I had the same meter. We lived there 39 years. The first year we rented. We owned that house for 38 years with the same meter. All of a sudden come along, we need a new meter. What happened? Same reading, 8,000. Not much more revenue was generated for the water department, was it? Well, people always cut back, we were told, that when these things take place, it'll come. But that never happened, did it? That didn't do it. Well, we can't get these meters anymore anyway. Let's sell them to them. I mean, talk about a crystal ball program. We were supposed to be getting dividends from this decision. And we ended up getting meters that, like I said, we had our meter for the 38 years that we owned the house. And by their own admission, these new meters, after 20 years, are going to need attention. What in the world are we buying? I think the way this entire water system is doing business is just totally wrong. Residents don't deserve, nor should council have to consider crystal ball proposals. And that's what this is. It's very vague. Our frail economy and stagnant wages don't allow us to develop slush funds. We've always had costs for operations and maintenance. We always will. We've always paid for them as well. They were specific proposals brought to this governing body with specifics to look at. Not, we'd like to have this, and then we're gonna get this little puddle of money here, and we come to you and say, well, there's enough money in there to cover it. Yeah. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's the old adage. Sure, it's an idea, but is it an idea that's right for us now? That's my question. Worthwhile projects can and should be addressed. If we need to replace a stretch of pipe, if we need a whole street full of water, you know, the citizens have always supported our needs, but I just don't believe in such an increase that is so vague that it's going to create a slush fund and somebody, well, there's $500,000 there, maybe I'll do the corner by Mike's Hardware this week. You know, it's just too vague for what you're asking. If you had specific proposals, I'm sure that people would support like they've done in the past forever. And I'm asking the council, vote no on this proposal. And if not, if you can't see yourselves to vote no because of the obvious, put it on the ballot to be considered by the general population. So you won't be on the hot seat. Let the people decide generally. And I want to thank you for your consideration of your time and my nervousness.
Thank you very much.
Sorry.
My name is Tom Van Dynen. I reside at 1209 West Washington Avenue. I prepared 20 points that I want you to consider. I've run copies if you want to pass those around. And I'll try to. Look, I need to talk about that. I read briefly through the summary of claims fact sheet that had been prepared for everybody. There's one glaring error that I want to point out, and that is the existing meters are no longer available. That is just flatly untrue. You can buy them by the thousands. They're the identical meter that we had is still manufactured. They're readily available. They're $73 a piece, and you get a quantity discount if you want to buy them by the thousand. So the fact that the meters were no longer available is just flat untrue. The other thing that I didn't see in Mr. Sellinger's presentation was how much of that money goes to the contractor that we've hired to maintain our system. That's something I would like to know. But my presentation is regarding the water waste issues. The questions are why? There are so many things wrong, I don't know where to begin. Why does everything on this, with the water and sewer issue, seem to be all wet and stink to high heaven? Why does the water and waste issue continue to rear its ugly head? This has been going on for several years now. Why has the promised revenue from the under-reading meters not panned out as promised? Why was a consultant hired to find ways to gouge the system users? Why wasn't an independent consultant hired to determine if the water contractor claims were in fact true? Why were the meters replaced with $1,000 units instead of $100 units? Why is the city trying to find ways to raise rates instead of reduce cost and give us system users a good value? Why don't you, as elected representatives of the people of Alpena, put yourselves back in our place and see if you like what you're doing? Why did the city council agree to a very lucrative deal with the water contractor without a guarantee of performance? Why does the council think that the water contractor is just going to give Alpena $1.5 million interest-free? I guarantee you the interest is rolled in someplace. Why isn't the water contractor being held accountable for the untrue claims they made to induce the city to sign the agreement in the first place? Why isn't a water consortium formed to efficiently operate the water waste system? Why has the water contractor not been doing their job testing and replacing the meters? We've been at it for 25 years now, I think. Why are we trying to sock it to our Alpena Township friends? Do they not patronize the city businesses too? Why is the city looking to the township for a revenue stream? Are we all not part of the same system? Why is the city allowing the water contractor to make a great deal of money at our expense? Why haven't we seen the millions of dollars in savings we were promised years ago when the water contractor was hired? Why has the water waste system been allowed to deteriorate and has not been maintained over the years, and now it's a crisis? Why is the excuse for the rate increase based on comparisons with other cities and not on how well we can do ourselves? And why isn't some of our city tax money being used to maintain the infrastructure? Those are my questions. Thank you.
That's a lot. Just I know. Just take a pause, I guess, between presenters, if you don't mind. That's a lot for us to swallow this evening, by far. But if I could, I might answer a couple of questions, because I was forwarded an email today that did touch on the tax money, on the taxes. Why do we pay property taxes every year that should go towards the needed repairs to our system? And Tom had that same point at the end of his. Can we answer to that just briefly, just to give, because that's asked quite often.
What the water and sewer utilities operate as enterprise funds. They money is not transferred from the water and sewer fund to the general fund, which is the balance of the city operations. with the exception of charges for services provided by the clerk's office, myself, and the various departments that do provide services to them. There's an administrative charge that is charged to the utilities. Other than that, all funding from water and sewer bills that are paid stay within the water and sewer utility. This general fund does not transfer money to the enterprise funds. The enterprise funds are expected, no, I'll take it back, are required by state law to be able to fund and operate independently with the funds that they receive through sale of water and sewer service. In fact, with the issuance of our next operating permit by the DNR, that will be a requirement on our permit language, that our rates have to be sufficient, to not only operate and maintain, but replace the infrastructure as needed. So tax dollars just do not go into those funds. They operate independently and need to be self-sufficient.
Rich, just to follow up on that, I might, on the same topic, is that by law because of the privatization?
You gotta make him come up.
Okay, you do have to come up.
To the microphone.
You do have to come up.
Yes, are these funds stay here because they're prohibited because of privatization?
That's the way our utility operation is set up, that those are enterprise funds and have to operate independently.
Right.
The laws coming down from the state of Michigan and actually from the federal government are being dictated to us that we will have to ensure that we have adequate funding for, like I say, not only the operation and maintenance, but the replacement of needed infrastructure.
Any kind of break. Now, can a bond be written from that?
We sell bonds
Can float a municipal bond?
for various, well, usually it's a revenue bond, correct, Carrie? It's a revenue bond that is sold, and basically what you're doing is you're saying that you're going to sell this bond for $1, $2, $3, whatever, $4 million, and that you will have sufficient revenue to repay that bond. When we were able to access the low-interest loans through the SRF, DWF, State Revolving Fund and Drinking Water Fund, to do about $7 million worth of improvements a few years back, we followed that up, those loans up, with back-to-back 10% increases on the water and sewer rates. And those increases were basically to repay that, make that bond repayment. You know, we have a principal and an interest payment that's due twice a year? Mm-hmm. Twice a year on those bonds. And we have to make sure that we have the funding in place to make those payments.
So we do still have the capability of bonding for needed replacement and maintenance.
You do. You're basically paying now, or buying now and paying later over time,
Right.
which, you know, and Karen, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but a principal and interest payment on those bonds.
This is all by line in the budget, which is on the website if you do ever want to go in there. And water and sewer each have their own fund. The revenue, 1998 revenues, principal is $125,000. The interest is $14,458 this
Yeah,
year.
what's the rate?
The rate, I don't know off the top of my head, sorry.
Traditionally, bonds are what, between 1% and 6%? I'm no accountant.
Yeah, 4 or 5 right
Yeah.
now, yeah.
Where if you get a loan from a private company that's run your, they run at 7.5% to 14%, everything I've read.
What,
You get an upgrade loan from them.
but basically, that 139,000, that's just, was
That's
that
just
water?
one of 'em.
That was just
Yeah.
one of them. And
Yeah.
you've got a similar, very similar amount in the next one. You start taking $278,000. That's money that we don't have on down the road for upgrades to the system. And that's the trade-off that you make. You take on a large project, but then you're depleting your resources to be able to follow that up in future years, because you have to make those bond principal and
sure.
interest payments.
But there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, and usually it's 20 or 30 years.
Yeah.
But also, those are not those bonds are not paid by, out of the general fund by tax revenue. It's strictly revenue from the utility. So it's the water rates that everybody pays, the sewer rates, they pay off the water and sewer bonds. It is not out of your tax dollars, your property tax dollars. None of that money is going towards those bond payments.
Is that another hindrance of privatization?
That has nothing to do with
That has nothing to do with
privatization.
it?
No,
Okay.
that has nothing to do.
So there are means to address it like we've done for Lord knows when we were privatized. Before we were privatized, we were public.
Well,
We're
we're
still-
still
we're still
public.
public.
What we do is we have contracted out the operation of the system, but we still own the system. If we bond, it's the city utility that's bonding, it's not the private company. And then for those, whatever it's being used for, it doesn't make any difference. That money, once we receive it, then is repaid over 20 or 30 years out of the revenues that are generated from the utilities.
But there are ways to address eventual maintenance you're gonna have to do.
Well, maintenance is ongoing. It's
Right.
basically replacement that we're talking about. And maintenance comes out of the operation and maintenance. That's stuff we do every year. We may have to replace a valve. We may have to, because it's leaking or whatever. But when we get into major projects, we're going to replace a block or 2 blocks because the sewer is simply bad. Generally, we'll go in, and unless the water's in very good shape, it's often all done at the same time. You've got to turn up, do it all at once, so you don't go back in 3 years and tear it all up again to do the other utility. You do them at once, put the road back, and you're done. That's where, those are our capital expenses that we look at capital dollars for, are those larger projects. Or if we have to replace some major component at one of the plants, the water plant or the water recycling, same thing.
And we may we may very well be looking at that in the, not, I don't want to say near future, but in the semi-distant future, 5 to 10 years out, we may have to replace the clear well down in there, down at the water plant, which is probably going to be a $1.5 million to $2 million job project. That is not something that we can pay for with just the funds that we have. That would be a project that we would bond for, and that would increase our debt payment, and the debt portion of those of the commodity charges would have to be increased to accommodate those additional payments. And those are things we have to look at and weigh out when we're getting ready to do those projects.
I don't think anybody's begrudging to looking at any project you have.
Does anybody, I can't,
It's the vagueness
can't
of this
keep-
proposal.
Ron, we can't keep debating like this, but I do want to invite anybody else that has a comment. Please come.
Angie Skiba, 635 River. I have several concerns. I would like to know the increases that they are proposing. Where exactly is the money going to be going? I've seen bits and pieces, but I want an actual breakdown to see what projects exactly you're referring to, what is the monetary value on each project, and exactly what is the breakdown. I would like to also know how long this hidden charge has been there for the ready-to-use charge. I don't think John Q. Public has been informed of this prior to these latest discussions. How long has this charge been invoked, and why isn't it spelled out in all of our water bills? Why has this been kept under wraps? Where is that money going? And it is not now shown on our bill. And what exactly is it used for, and how long has it actually been charged? I have a few more comments. We were told that
Can I
we
stop?
needed-
Can I just
Sure,
stop you just
certainly.
real quick?
That'd be great.
You've never been billed that ready-to-serve charge before.
We've never had one with the city. This is the first time it's been proposed.
Really? Because
Yes.
I just went and paid on my bill, and they said currently, the current ready-to-serve charge is currently $5.76 $5.76 on my current bill.
It's
And
not-
it's
the
not
new
ready to
proposed
serve.
bill
That's the billing?
is
That's the billing
$10
charge.
for the other meter and $5.84. So my concern is, we were told we needed new meters. Is that correct, or am I wrong?
The $5.76 has always been added to the water and sewer bill. It's a one-time charge, that's either.
Meeting once a year?
No, once a bill that's added to your bill. So you'd get the sewer charge, a water charge, and then there's a $5.76. It's not referred to as a ready to serve, and I can't remember the exact terminology. It's in the fee schedule, but I don't remember the exact terminology on it.
Mike, go ahead.
It's a service charge.
Service
That
charge.
pays for the cost of generating the bill and mailing the bill, and that cost is the same for everybody. Every bill costs the same amount to send it out, so.
So it's a service charge.
So, yeah, it's not a ready to serve. We've never had that until it's proposed this
Okay,
time.
so I misunderstood. So we were told that we needed new meters. They were forced upon us. I did not believe that they were needed. They were all changed out, and it did not generate the income that was expected. So now we are being forced into a monthly bill, which I question that, because now we have the privilege of having a monthly bill and paying $10 plus $5.84 per bill, times 12, which is a cost that we did not incur before. Am I correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay, so why is that necessary to bill us 12 times and not leave it at the 4 and cut back our cost of $10 and $5.84 and leave it at the 4 billings? Why should we pay that increase just for the privilege of being billed more times than we choose? I don't think that is an advantage. I think this is far too expensive, and why aren't we starting with a minimal increase, if you care about the citizens of Alpena, at a minimum of a 20% increase, let's say. The economy is not good here. There are many people that can't afford this proposal, and if the council cares about the citizens of Alpena, they will not allow this drastic rate to be increased this way. Please vote no. Please do not make a final decision tonight, and listen to the citizens of Alpena, investigate the 20 points that were brought up, and do more research, and realize that we cannot afford this in the city of Alpena. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie.
If I may. You know, the question, and I've heard it a couple times, you know, that this is, that this is going into some pot of money. What are the projects that are going to be undertaken? Every year, since before I started here, and that's been over 21, we participate and every year generate a 6-year capital improvement plan that identifies projects. It's published, it's on our website, it's published in our budget. It's available if people want to take the time to look at it. And it identifies many projects. And the sheet that I pulled up, this is just for the sewer collection. Water recycling, you know, we're looking at the first year, and it's toned down because we knew we didn't have a lot of funds available, but, you know, $650,000 in the sewer fund. Next year's 1.27, 2.928, 2.244 million. Those are not pie in the sky projects. Those are projects that are needed and have been identified as being needed out in the system. And then you go down the same thing with the water fund, our water distribution and our water production. $704,000 next year. 3.4 million the following year, 4.14 million the following year. These are projects that are identified, and this is where, you know, the need, the $3.6 million that our consultant recommended was to help cover these types of improvements. Obviously, with $1.9 million that we are proposing with this, you're not gonna be able to undertake these and keep up. The first year you will, but you're gonna have to delay projects back. But that's part of the rationale and part of what we looked at when we said, okay, we can tone back from the 3.6 down to the 1.9. But these projects, and like I said, this document is produced every year by a joint city council, city planning commission. It's presented publicly, it's in the budget, and it does list all of the projects. And the supporting documentation for each one of these projects is also included in our master capital improvement plan.
It's used as part of our budgeting when we go, like right now, we are preparing the 2014-15 budget. We take that capital improvement plan. We know we are not going to fund every project. There just are not enough funds, whether it's water, sewers, streets, equipment, whatever. And at each budget year, staff and ultimately council makes decisions on what the priority projects are and capital projects will be, and that's what's funded within the funds that are available. Some of these are out of the local major street funds, others out of the water and sewer, others out of the equipment fund, others are out of the general fund. But from that list is always pared down. And priorities are set and ultimately approved by the city council as part of the budget that's adopted that will begin July 1st of this year. And that is a normal process.
In the front of the budget, there's also a document that lists what was requested for funding by the various departments through the capital improvement program, and what were eliminated and what the final projects were that were included. And
Big one for sewer and water.
it's pretty drastic.
And they do, I'll just note, just quick briefly before I invite the next person up, because there were several already that said that the revenue needs are vague and that you'd like a breakdown of the revenue needs. They are there. It's not fun to sit down and look at all that stuff. And before I was elected and I was sitting in your seat, I didn't look. But I can tell you that from my perspective now, where I am sitting now, I've been to, I think, 3 CIP meetings. They are there and they are broken out. You couldn't really hardly read that because it's so small on there. But here's for instance, when I was elected, a lot of people on the north side were still complaining, or were complaining at the time, about that road right next to Lincoln School. Is it Lake Street? It was like a dirt road. Might as well have been a dirt road. And so when I came on, I talked about that quite a bit at CIP, and it just kept getting pushed off because of funding. Got pushed off because of funding, because they're going to fix the road when they couldn't afford to fix the water and sewer that were underneath it. So anybody can come in, you can spend a couple grand to fix a road, but the water and sewer needed to be replaced. Same thing with Grant Street now. Lake Street is fixed. Grant Street, people complain to me almost daily about Grant Street. And I don't want to be cold, and I don't want to sound like I'm an idiot or something, but money just doesn't fall from the sky. The money to replace all of that water infrastructure comes from your bill, the bill that you pay, that everybody pays, that I pay, we pay. And the breakdown of what our plan is, Grant Street, major roads, they're all listed by road and sometimes by block, what the plan is and priority of when we intend to fix that, and it's all on our website. If at any time you want to look at it but you can't find it because there are so many things on the website, you can call Karen's office, you can call Rick's office, Vicki will walk you through it, or someone in the clerk's office will literally walk you through how to find it. So with that said,
I would just ask, Rich, you had given me the number before, to basically replace water, sewer, street on a typical block is roughly how much?
Well, just as an example, the 2 blocks of Lake Street that we did last year, and we were very fortunate, we got very good pricing on there. But that was $250,000 to replace those 2 blocks. about $125,000 a block, which is low. Normally, we see it in $160,000 to $200,000 per block to replace it. And that's, you know, in my discussions internally with the city staff, even at 1.9, that's 8, 9, 10 blocks that we can replace. But I've also got a water plant and a wastewater plant that I have to take care of, replacing equipment there. Take that away. Now you're down, maybe we can do 5, 6 blocks. You know, and that's the trade-off that we're doing. And right now, we don't have that 1.9. Right now, if we have $1 million, that's a big year to be able to undertake. Okay, so I can do 5 blocks, but then I got to take money away from those to be able to go over and do improvements to the plant. Those are the things that we have to look at, and it's a balancing act. You know, Lake Street, if I didn't get 20 calls a year on it, when are you going to get it fixed? That was the case, but Matt's 100% right. We had to delay it. He'd call and say, Lake Street's bad, let's get it fixed. I can't, I don't have the funds to do it. Those are the trials that we have to go through to try to get the most improvements for the funding available.
And I don't want to belabor this part of the conversation, but I do think it's important that I would encourage you to look at the CIP and look at all the projects that need to be done and look at how very little of them we actually do. And for me as a resident, that scares me more than my bill going up, because there are so many projects that we can't get to because we don't have the money. So, and as they've said, it's there, and I would encourage you to take a look at it and compare what needs to be done with what we actually get done each year.
Can I make one quick comment, one follow-up? Others have been allowed.
Yeah, if you'll come up, yeah.
One brief comment over the years since we've hired a contractor to manage the water and the sewer. What I've seen is they get new office buildings, and pretty soon we're spending millions of dollars there, and we're spending millions of dollars beautifying the sewer plant for the benefit of the harbor, and then we spend millions of dollars replacing unnecessary water meters, and now those millions of dollars should have gone into the ground, into the pipes, instead of being frittered away. And now that we didn't do that, now we're being asked to foot the bill for all that. And I think that we need to stop spending the money on the unnecessary things and start putting it into the ground. Thanks.
I had one other question. When you said that the ready-to-serve charge, is that necessary or can that be eliminated? Why are we proposing that?
It's part of the overall billing scenario. One of the, could it go away? Yes. But to keep that funding level, it's going to be made up someplace else. It would have to be made up someplace else. To try to achieve the funding level that is needed, the $1.9 million, yes, you could eliminate the ready-to-serve charge. That's
$678,000 or so dollars.
That's wrong.
It seems that our in-home services right now that we have been ready to serve, why are we all of a sudden just going to add $10 for that? When nothing's changing.
Yeah. Basically, it's a portion of the revenue stream. There's a lot of homes that sit there with no use, that are closed up. There's still services. We still have to maintain those lines to those homes. There's still, there's folks that elect to shut off their water for the winter if they're going to be out of town. We still have service to ensure service and reliable service to those homes. There's a cost associated with that. This is to help recoup a portion of those costs in maintaining and having that water and sewer service ready and reliable to provide. We have very reliable water. Now, this winter we've had a few breaks, but I think that's could be said for most any community. But we have a very reliable system. It is a well-maintained system. It's aged. I'll be the first one to tell you that. Do we have breaks in it? Yes, we do. and those are corrected as quickly and as efficiently as we can. But the ready-to-serve charge, it was a recommendation from our consultant, because that is portion of the rate-making process. We looked at it, we looked at the justifications behind it, and felt it was appropriate for us to implement here. Now, like I said, had we not implemented it, I'm just trying to pull up the right scenario. Yeah, it's that's $677,760. It's generated by all the 4,700 and some accounts that we have. If that is not implemented, do I shift that $677,600 down into the infrastructure maintenance charge and raise that up per 1,000 gallons to offset that? The bottom line is to try to obtain that funding that's needed. How you spread that out, how you split that out, you can move these numbers all around. This was one option that we looked at, and it's pretty much a standard in the industry to utilize this scenario. We didn't before. We had a system that we had lived with for a long time. We knew it was time to look at it and reevaluate it. This is pretty much the industry standard rate basis methodology for establishing the rates, and it's just a matter of where you put that funding.
So basically, we're going to pay for it one way or the other, you just have to decide how you're going to define it?
Yeah, if to achieve the $1.9 million that is needed to maintain the system, it needs to be implemented someplace, whether it's in the ready-to-serve charge or in some other charge.
So are you considering the possibility of not going to 12 monthly bills so we don't have those additional fees? I mean, I don't choose to have 12 bills, personally. I don't have that extra money to pay you 8 times more those extra fees. I can't afford it. And I know a lot of people in Alpena are saying the same thing, and I've asked them to come to the meetings and speak to you individually and call you and tell you to vote no and to stop this huge rate increase, but I don't think a lot of them will verbalize their feelings. So some people have to try and represent, but.
Some of them have, we've got a lot of emails and stuff.
So are those locked-in proposals? I mean,
Nothing is until the council votes on it.
Okay.
If we stayed at quarterly, it would change the billing, how much you paid for the billing fee. However, the ready-to-serve charge, which is basically $10 a month, water and sewer, would simply become $30 every quarter. That would not be reduced. It would simply change from $10 a month to $30 a quarter. What you would get reduced on would be the billing charge.
And it wouldn't be, it wouldn't be reduced by 2/3. You would be reduced by mailing charges and bill preparation charges. You still have to have people there to take the money to service those accounts.
So you're saying if you're saying the $10 fee, it'd still be $30, so you are locked into a $10 per month, basically.
That's what's proposed now.
Ready-to-serve fee.
The ready-to-serve fee as proposed is for a residential customer would be $120 a year. So whether it's divided monthly or quarterly, it would still equal $120 under the proposal that the council has before it. Now, whether the council decides to change that, that's their decision to make. Staff looks at what we see are the needs of the system. How do we get there? Here's the proposal, but we don't have the final say. All we can do is recommend a proposal. The council then will decide whether to accept that, reject it, or modify it. And that still has yet to be done.
And we have
I would hope that you would hope to, at the very least, if you're going to propose that fee, knock that down to half. And what Rich has said, I don't care to pay for someone who chooses to turn off their water, whose home is shut down and whose home has issues. I pay for my own water. I don't care to have to be those fees passed on to me. So I think those fees, those things need to be considered as well.
And I think,
Thank you.
Angie, I think just as a point of clarification, that's what we're trying to do. The people that elect to shut off their water, they would still be paying. Otherwise, all the rest of the citizens have to pay for that offset, to offset that loss. So,
Okay, so I misunderstood the way you said it. It sounded like the way it would happen, that we would be paying because those things happen.
you know, the way this is set up, it's trying to put the burden of that cost on those properties, even if they shut their water off.
Greg, could you explain real quick the rationale for going to a monthly bill?
Well,
opposed to-
initially, we knew that there was going to be a significant increase to all the rate users. And the question really became, if you look at the rates, and I'm just gonna pick out the 12,000 gallon one, where right now your bill's roughly $115.80 on a quarterly basis, is it jumps to $170-120, is what is more palatable, to get one large bill, and if you, at least myself at times, I tend to forget when the water bill is coming, and I got a few other quarterly bills that I get, and then suddenly, you're kind of budgeting, and then they're suddenly there, and they kind of throw your budget for a loop. The idea was that it could be more palatable and easier for people to budget on a monthly basis, because it would then be the same as your electric bill, your natural gas bill, your cable bill, your telephone bill. They're all monthly bills. And then this would be another monthly bill that would be smaller than getting the one large one on a quarterly basis. That's the rationale. Now, could that still be left at quarterly? Yes, it could be, and that could still be discussed and decided by the council. But that was the reasoning to go. The other one is, for the system itself, is the cash flow is much better for the system in terms of the money, because it's more steady, the money coming in, when it's coming in monthly rather than quarterly. So that's another reason that we saw it as advantageous, not just towards looking at the customer end, but also the utility end.
But with the extra fees added in there, it automatically jacks our bills up by paying that, if you're saying that.
Basically,
So that's not fair to us.
What it does is it increases, like you said, by 8 times. If you take the $5.84, make it by 6, or it makes it $6, it's an additional $48 a year, because you've got 8 more billing fees that you're paying.
It was an additional $120.84, $15.84 times
But
8.
that you're including, I think, the ready to serve charge.
Yes.
But that would be there, at least under the proposal. Wouldn't make any difference whether it's a quarterly bill or a monthly bill. If it's monthly, it'll be $10 a month. If it's quarterly, it'll be $30 a quarter. So you're still going to have that $120 bill.
Unless you choose to.
Unless
drop that,
they
if
choose to change that differently. That would not change based on how the billing occurs.
Okay, I would propose that you would drop that ready to serve fee, at least drop that in half. And I think that we are being slammed with the proposed issue of 47.8% increase is a huge increase in any bill, and I don't think that John Q. Public and the citizens of Alpena can afford it. I think that the consensus of opinion out there, I do know you need a rate increase, but I would say that even if you would consider a 20% increase in the beginning and see how we can effectively pay their bills, because I'll guarantee you that you may bill 12 times a month, but you're not going to get everybody, they can't afford to pay it. Can't afford, look at our heating bills, all of our other bills, and the way our whole economy is in Alpena. We want Alpena to grow. We want to continue to bring business here and to continue to bring, to increase our city in a positive light. And I think this is detrimental to that. But thank you for your answers.
Thank you.
The only other thing, if I could just add one other thing. Our utility, though, is not immune from the same things that hit you. Our utility electrical costs go up. Our natural gas costs go up. Our insurance costs go up. Our gasoline, so the vehicles and that, they go up. And those all have to be repaid, and they impact us the same as they do any other business. That's why utilities such as electric and gas go and have rate increases, because their costs go up, they increase their rates. They usually have to go through the Public Service Commission. We go through this process. But in the end, we still have to cover those bills and those increases. In addition to, that's just normal increases, whatever most people call cost of living increases. Everybody, has those and you deal with. Sometimes you absorb them as much as you can, and there are times when eventually you have to, if you are a business, which basically our utilities are a business, they must raise their rates. Now, the issue we have here is a little different because what we're talking about is not just your standard increase of 3-4% because cost of living or doing business went up that much. It is the capital dollars to fund that CIP program, which we know we are not meeting currently. We need to get closer, but we know it's going to be many years, if ever, that we hit what we need. It'd be wonderful if we hit the lottery and suddenly we had the money where we could spend $3.6 million every year, and in 6 years, even though we'd have that done, I guarantee you other projects would come up and it would continue, but we'd be able to cover it. And it's just not that way. The only place it comes from are the ratepayers, which are you and I, everybody who's up here. We all pay it.
Anyone else?
Wesley Gentry. I do not live in the city. I try and maintain a kind of private life of what I do, but I feel compelled as an entrepreneur and landlord in the area. I own 10 plus properties in the city. All across the board. Commercial, duplexes, nice homes. I really thinking about having a hard time billing my tenants for this increase. I would like to propose maybe implementing it over a longer period of time. I just did rough numbers. I'm not really prepared for this speaking here, so bear with me. I'm a little nervous. But myself individually, along with a co-partner and a couple different businesses I have, we pay over $100,000 just in property taxes. Just basic numbers, and between my daughter's basketball game getting here, I'm talking about close to $30,000 in water bill increases, and I'm very concerned about that. Also, there's a few people here that know some other business owners I'm involved with, and we had tentative plans to do some large-scale projects in Alpena, and I'm very concerned this being slapped upon us so quickly that it may leave a bad taste in all of our mouths not to pursue these other projects. We're talking about multi-million-dollar things. So I feel bad for all the residents in Alpena, but also as a business owner and landlord, I'm very concerned about the future here. But really like you to consider people such as myself that are pretty private, behind the scenes, but we do an awful lot. Thank you.
Thanks, Wes.
Jim Murphy, 221 Dawson Street. I have pored over these figures for the last month, and needless to say, I'm upset. I want this council to look around this room and see, take a good hard look at the people you see sitting here. Most of those people are retirees. Most of those people are on fixed incomes, like myself. I'm one of the fortunate people. I just got a big raise in my Social Security of $24 a month. With your yearly, monthly fee, the 5, 5, and 492, or 494, or 584, I think it is, that comes to $190.08 for every resident in the city of Alpena that never turns on their faucet. That's not a water charge. I hope everybody understands it. That's not a water charge. I don't want to sound redundant with other remarks that have been made tonight, but I'm upset. You bet I'm upset. I got a $400 raise in my Social Security check, and I'm going to give $190 in fees for nothing. Now, maybe that money will be used properly, maybe it won't. I'll never know. People on the board, I ask you to consider the facts that maybe you have parents that are on Social Security. Maybe you have parents that are on a fixed income that don't get as much as I get. I'm sure there's some of those people in this audience tonight. Please reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, most of you know me, but I'll introduce myself anyway. My name's Chuck Pinkowski. I live at 615 A Street, and I'm here to express my concerns about this also. I know that the infrastructure is bad in this town, and I know there has to be an increase, but at what cost? I mean, right now, you guys are fighting with the township on this. Okay, you vote this in tonight, and the township takes the city to court. Okay, how much is it gonna cost you in litigation over this? Or you go to mediation, and you lose, okay? And they get the rates reduced from what you're proposing. Are you gonna reduce our rates in the city? If you don't, you're gonna have some awful ticked off city people, because the township already pays less for water than what we do. And I don't think it's fair to the city residents that that's happening. And I mean, I'm not against the township, it's just the way it is right now. But I don't think that if this does happen, and you use up our taxpayer money by going to litigation, that is wrong. That is very wrong. And these fees, the original billing charge fee was for $4. Now it's up to $5.84. Why is that? I understand that's probably going to be because of privatization of that.
I can answer that, but the $4 was when the city proposed the unified system, because then you had both the city customers and the township customers, which total, well, we have 4,800, I believe the township's 2,000 to 2,200. Because you had a larger customer base, the rate was smaller.
Now the city taxpayer is going to incur that cost.
But the fact that you are, it's based on the number of customers. So yes, it is higher without the, when you do not do the unified system.
I just don't, I think the city taxpayer is getting run over the coals on this deal. I know there needs to be an increase, but I think some of the, like this ready to serve charge, I don't think it needs to be $10. I mean, why can't you get by with $5 and increase it down the road? You know, why all this at once? And my next question is, okay, what happens to these people that are going to get their water turned off because they can't afford the bill? What's going to happen to these people? I mean, they're going to have to decide whether they want their medication, their lights left on, or what, you know? And now this increase You know, it's just going to be bad for them. You know, I'm not one of those people, but I know there are people in this town that are barely surviving now, and it's going to happen. I want to know, are you going to go be the one to go turn the water off and tell them, sorry, you can't pay your bill? Thank you.
Chuck?
Hi, my name is Jürgen Tusa. I live at 139 Outer Drive in Alpena Township. Coming at it from a different angle here. I see in your proposal, for some reason you have decided, I don't know when or where, to consider the township a customer. Why was that decision made? If a customer stops paying your bill, you turn off the water. Can you legally turn off the water to a township?
No.
So they aren't a customer, right? Why are we treating the township like a customer when they're not a customer? So I think that in and of itself creates a big problem for you. The other thing I question is, you know, why are we, the township, paying for your lack of planning? That's what this is. You heard when you said you had to raise the fees because you were going, the unified system was rejected by the township. So you had to increase it from the $4 to whatever because you have fewer customers. You now consider Alpena Township as one customer instead of the thousands of customers that live in the township. I think it's creating a bigger problem than you are even contemplating. The biggest problem is we have an opportunity for economic development that is starting to really take off in this community, but that requires cooperation between the city, the township, and the county. This is not going to help cooperation at all. You already had one person say, you know, they're going to could possibly forego economic development. And that's a local person. For a person from the outside looking in, they're not even going to touch us. We have to think about the bigger picture here. You know, a little less money for your pockets might be a better way to go. I just hope you guys really reconsider what you're doing.
Thank you, Jürgen. Very good. Anyone else? Are there any elected, I'd ask the elected officials to wait until last if there are any that would want to approach the council. Sheriff?
Well, first of all, I'm going to start off by apologizing. It was my intention today to call Mr. Sullinger and try and get some facts in regards to water services that, water and sewer services that the Alpena County Sheriff's Office pays for. And unfortunately, I had a bunch of meetings today and a court case earlier this afternoon. I wasn't able to contact you to get some answers, so I apologize ahead of time. However, in looking at the increases, I have concerns because obviously we have a budget, you guys have budgets, and we want to maintain our budgets and stay within them to the best of our ability. I've looked at the water and sewer rates that are being proposed. I've looked at what we are currently paying. And I'm not sure if there's a difference between residential and commercial, but it appears that we're paying more. Am I wrong in that? Can someone list that real quickly?
Water rates are the same unless you fall in. Right now, there is a declining block rate, which if you're over 50,000 gallons in a quarter, then you do get some discounts on that. But I in the records that I had, you weren't in the top 10 users. I know that as far as volume.
In the top 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I looked at as well. It looks like because we're within the county, because we run a jail, we're a 24-hour operation. We have inmates, 57 right now. So I would anticipate as a county entity that we pay more than the other county entities. But I'm concerned, you mentioned, Mr. Sundin, you mentioned increases in fuel and all that other stuff. And obviously, we have to anticipate that as well. And one of the things that we didn't anticipate was a pretty big increase in sewer and water rates. So our budget was set back in October. We had budget meetings through that month. And the budget was pretty much set in December. And if my math is right, and I'm trying to understand this to the best of my ability, and I'd like to get some more information, it looks like for the county it's going to be an increase of about $12,000. Again, I need to look at the numbers to verify that, but I can tell you it's not in the budget. The county's got a pretty tight budget right now. We do have a contingency fund. It's not a huge contingency fund, but that contingency fund is used for all county departments throughout the county government. I'm here on behalf of the sheriff's office. I'm not here in regards to the other ones. But I do have concern in regards to what cost it's going to have for my budget overall, because if you look at the county budget, obviously if there's an increase there that affects every budget throughout the county, and somewhere down the line it's going to affect my budget. So I'm concerned about that. I had to make a decision today as to how I was going to come dressed today because of the position that I am. I'm the sheriff for Alpena County, but I'm also a resident of the city of Alpena as well. And I guess I'm in a no-win situation. So I'd like to take off my sheriff uniform right now and get into my citizen Steve uniform, if I may.
Just figuratively.
I'm sorry?
You may figuratively.
Yes, exactly. All of us have budgets. I have a budget, and for my residence, the house that my wife and I and our children live in, and many of you know that my wife is a public school employee. Quite a few public school employees have already received a 10% pay cut because of what the school system is currently going through. And we're looking at that being imposed on our family as well. And we've already made significant changes in my personal budget so that we can anticipate some of these cuts that are coming down. We didn't anticipate our water and sewer rate going up. So that's going to be a pretty significant hit for us in the personal budget itself. I have 6 children at home, so teenagers, and it seems like, for Pete's sakes, they love to take 20-minute showers. You holler at them and try and tell them to knock it off and get it under control, but they don't listen. So we've already made cuts in our personal budget. Sorry to say, Steve, one of the cuts was to the Alpena News, and I miss it. I miss a lot of the things that are going on here. I didn't know that this was taking place until I read it in at the health club. That this meeting was taking place. So if I'm concerned about my personal budget, and my wife and I have pretty decent jobs, there are other people out there who are in worse shape than I am, and I hope you take that into consideration. Thank you.
Steve. Citizen Steve. No, Sheriff Steve. There we go. We'll go back to that. We can certainly, and it's easy enough, we can pull up your billing history, and I can punch it into the spreadsheet I've got and project out what type of impact it would actually have on your bill.
That would be great, because one of the things we try and do, and you as city folks, as city government people do it as well. It irks me when we have a vendor that comes to us and says, you've got an increase that's coming up and it wasn't anticipated. And maybe irks is a wrong word to use, because you certainly don't irk me. I understand what your situation is about. But this was unanticipated, obviously. We didn't anticipate such a big increase in that budget. And it would be nice if we had, forewarning that come January, so that we could, we could budget for it in the future. Not only my department, but other departments as well.
It'll likely be next week, but I can get that information to you.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Just also that when you say it impacts, the county, your department, any rate increases also affect the city. It will affect the city police department and the city fire department, the bill we pay here at City Hall for water and sewer. So, I mean, the city's not immune from its own increase.
I understand.
It too will be paying it and have to budget accordingly.
I understand that, Mr. Sullivan, and I empathize with you. I know what boat you're in, so I do.
And Steve, may I say too that I found the cold blast system for my teenage son to be very effective.
The only other comment, I think, I believe Chuck had made, I would disagree somewhat with the portrayal of our system as being one that's in very bad shape. It is not. It is operating very efficiently. Yes, we have things that need to be replaced. When you have a system, if you go back to the beginning, our system was probably started before the turn of the 20th century. And a lot of that's been replaced, but then those pipes and infrastructure or things at the plant also have to be replaced. They have useful lives, and they turn over and have to be replaced. And so it is ongoing. It's not like this process, well, we get to here, we're done, and now we can sit back and rest. It's kind of like painting the Mackinac Bridge. You start at one end, in 7 years, I think it is, they say they get to the other end, and when they're done, they start over again. It's ongoing, and that's the same here. And it's the same with any system. It's ongoing. So if we have a fully functional and operational system, sure, the line breaks occasionally here and there, when they do, we repair them. But there is no crisis in terms of are we going to be able to provide quality water, quality sewage treatment, because that we have and will continue to have. I just wanted to clarify that.
Good evening. My name is Marie Twite, and I am supervisor for Alpena Township. And I am not sure that I heard correctly because I'm sitting in the back, and I thought I heard that the amount that the city collected from its residents was in $600,000 plus for their system. No.
That's only the ready-to-serve charge.
That's how much you would collect from a ready-to-serve charge?
Only on the ready-to-serve. That is not the per 1,000-gallon rate that you pay for consumption of water, sewage usage.
I thought that in somewhere in here it said that your collection for your usage was not much higher than ours.
No.
Could you tell me
percentage?
how much?
Oh, there was, what did
You
we
collect
have
a
there
year?
as a percentage?
I thought it was $600,000.
The $678,000, that's the ready-to-serve charge that is charged to each customer. But that is...
No. That's per, just the $10 per.
That's right. That's
what
all
it'll bring in?
that's what the 678
Okay.
is, yes.
Oh, okay. Well, can you reveal what you collect a year?
Yes, sir.
Total
I
revenue
couldn't see
stream.
that.
Yeah, well, I understand that.
Total revenue stream from all customers, and this does include the township, would be $6,191,000.
No, I'm asking what you collected last year, before you initiate any new fees.
Yeah, not under the proposal.
Just for your own usage. That's what I'm asking.
Well, our budget
Which
revenue.
is, Karen has it in the budget.
Because in these documents, it actually said $504 or $304,000 on the ones that you had prepared for us. Because ours said 200 and some, and I came and asked the question, but I find it hard to believe that that's a good number for me to be looking at.
You're talking volumes, not dollars, I believe.
No, on ours it shows dollars. It shows that Alpena Township paid the city of Alpena over $1 million last year for water, or on average, that's about what we pay a year.
About 1.2 million for water and sewer.
Right.
Together, yes.
I was wondering what in comparison, because the numbers that you used in here, in which I had discussed those with you,
In the actual for 11-12 revenue, sales and charges was 1.82. That's everything,
So-
yours and ours.
Yours and ours, so we pay 1.2 million, and you pay
No.
600,000?
No, 1.8 is just water, and you
Oh,
pay
okay.
600,000 of that.
We pay 600,000.
Right, so you pay about a third.
A third of them, and that's, well, that's what we use, right?
Well,
30 or
the
40
percentage
some.
is a bit higher than that, but yeah, what your paying, your dollar amount is roughly 1/3 of the total revenue.
That's what you're collecting, and you collect, but that isn't what the numbers were that you showed in that document the day I asked you. When I
I'm
was
not
saying
sure
about
which number that you're talking about. I mean, there were a lot of numbers that we went back and forth.
3-year average, they were 1,000-gallon comparison units,
Oh,
Talking about this one.
and, yeah.
Well, you
third-
Okay.
Karen, the number you just gave is for water, right?
Right.
Right.
So they pay a third of our
Total-
total revenue on water,
Total
and they use
volume billed.
43% of it.
Doesn't that mean how much you billed us for?
What, no,
I think you're looking at,
no, this one here.
This one right here.
Okay, that's that one.
That's that one right up there. That's gallons. That's
1,000 gallons.
231 million, because that's in thousand, or is that 231,000?
it was 231 million gallons, 231,221,000 gallon units.
And those were the numbers that I asked you that day in your office. And you told me those next numbers were the city's numbers, and I said, that can't be it. Is that,
Those are the numbers
Those are the numbers
that are.
so you're saying Alpena Township uses 231,
Right, you use
And you use
43.16,
Right.
yes.
and you have twice as many users as us? Okay, I was just making sure I understood that.
Okay. So I'm going to close the open public comment period.
Matt, may I make one more comment?
Yes, sir. Please come to the mic again, Ron.
I'd like to say that from what I've gleaned off this meeting tonight, everybody recognizes that some money, additional money, needs to go in our sewer and water system. But I think we need to scale back our wants and needs from our priorities or whatever. And so this isn't, it's gotta be admitted by the entire room. This is a very, very sizable increase. And they're all probably worthwhile projects, but I think they need to be scaled back because just by the brunt of how much is being asked for, it's gotta be recognized as too big of a chunk all at once. Nobody's denying we need work and money to work with. But these amounts are just astronomical.
Thanks, Ron. Okay, I'm going to close public comment. Request written comments received to the clerk's office.
I did not receive any.
We did have a couple of emails that were specific to certain council people that I kind of touched on at the beginning. They're pretty much along the same lines as the comment here, not necessarily written comment. So that closes the entire public comment section, and now we're on council discussion. And the line item on the agenda is approval of the water and sewer rate increases with an effective date of April 1st, 2014. Expecting that no one is going to immediately jump at a motion to do that. I'd like to open by just making a couple of comments that on behalf of council, I certainly appreciate everyone that was willing to come up here and voice your concerns and your comments. Each one of you more than likely represents several hundred people that did not come. So I certainly appreciate that. We did take a lot of notes. You have a lot of the same concerns we do. And we could, there's a couple of things that I really don't want to get too much involved in discussion this evening. One of them being the meters. because that was before most of council's time, most of the council members that are here's time that decision was made. And we could probably debate all night long and not change anyone's mind. If you've made up your mind that those were a bad idea and that they're not being paid for appropriately and that somebody got screwed or whatever, there's no one here that's going to be able to change your mind whether we agree with that or not. So I really didn't want to get too involved in that. And I'm not really too sure how much actual discussion that I would personally like to have regarding the township and our agreement with them. I can assure you that we've all mentioned before as representatives of the city that it's the city's residents' best interests that we're interested in. At the same time, we held off our rate increases to the city residents, hoping that by now we would have made a lot of positive progress with the township and our agreement with them. At this point, right now, we have not. Certainly, from my perspective, we have not made the progress with them that we would like to have made. I would like to continue to make more progress with them, quite honestly, and I'm not significantly satisfied with the proposal that we have on the table right now regarding the township and how they will be billed. But with that said, that's just my own personal view. I'm not sure what the rest of council would do. So, to open it up, I guess, to discussion with a lot of the points that you made, we've talked about to a pretty substantial level at earlier meetings. How much money we generate from revenue on an annual basis basically determines how much work we can do to the system at any given point. Whether it be a huge leak on Ripley Street that devours a ton of money, or whether it be fixing Lake Street or Grant or any other street. So just depending on how much we can do, and I understand our reluctance to make such a huge increase that people are going to have difficulty paying it. I mean, I get that. We all have bills. But at the same time, we do have to be a responsible council in the fact that if we don't maintain some level of revenue from the payers of the system, of the water, I don't want to be answering to somebody 5 years from now that it's been 5 years and the water structure under their road is horrible, or their road surface is horrible, and we're not going to, like Lake Street was for so long. And I'm sure that there's probably streets out there right now, Grant, for instance, been pushed into down the road. This year that is going to get done. So if anybody lives anywhere near Grant Street or uses it on a regular basis, that is subject to start here in May. So, but I'm just using it as an example because it should never have gotten this bad.
Could be June, depends on when school gets out, could be July.
Okay, well, and the thaw, I'm sure the weather has a lot to do with it, but it is on our issue. But the difficulty that I have in making this decision, and I trust that we have been transparent, and I trust that with the outside consultant that we had, and he went over all of our books, and he went over the CIP, and he went over, with what we have as far as the maintenance that we need. We need to charge for maintenance. We need to charge for operating costs. We need to charge for to have some revenue to do the major projects that we need to do, and I understand that. And the issue that I'm having is, okay, to get to that point that they wanted, we've already scaled it back probably almost half of what the original consultant said. And of course, he's not paying, so he doesn't care. Of course, I mean, he just said, you want this amount of money to do everything you've got on the table, you're going to have to raise your rate 75%, or maybe at one time it was even 110% or whatever it was. We've scaled that back significantly since then. And now I would venture to guess that just by a lot of the comments that we're having, that we may or may not scale that back and phase it in. But the difficulty that I have is exactly what point do I know that the majority of residents can afford? What increase can they afford? What increase can you afford? Some of you could afford what we have on the table. Some of you couldn't afford another 10% increase. And I don't mean you as, finger pointing you, but I just mean residents in general. So the difficulty that I have is, okay, and I said it last week, let's say we propose phasing this in over a 2-year or every year for a 5-year period, or every year for a 3-year period. So we raise the rates 15% this year, and then we raise the rates again 15% next year. I consider myself on somewhat of a fixed income because my boss hasn't given me a raise in 8 years. So when you're on a fixed income, whether you're elderly and a senior, or whether you're just at a job where the economy hasn't picked up enough for you to get a raise, how much more am I going to be able to afford next year that I can't afford this year? So if I raise it 12% this year, and then next year I go back and I raise it another 12%, that's the trouble I'm having as a representative of you, as to determining how much a person can afford at a time when we do go to raise these, because 5 years from now we want to be at a certain point. Do we get there in 1 year? Do we get there in 2 years? Do we get there in 5 years? Is anybody really realistically going to get a big enough raise in the next 5 years to make up for all of that? These are just questions I ask myself when I go to make a huge decision like this. So I'm just sharing it with you, and you probably don't even think, boy, that poor sap. But it's probably all of us maybe have that same issue, as to we have a responsibility to get our infrastructure up to a point where it should be, but we have to charge the people, the users of that infrastructure, to make those improvements. So, and we can, like I said, we can argue about United Water and how every individual thinks about how they're managing, how they're conducting their business there. They're transparent. We can look at their records. We can see how much they're paying their individuals. Money isn't disappearing. I don't have it all in front of me, but with in regard to our transparency and where that money goes, and some of the other allegations that are made, call and ask. If you can't find that information, call and ask, because I'm pretty sure that's all public information, right down to how much individual salaries are to a certain extent. So, and every time we get I'm rambling a little bit, but I just want you to understand how it works. Every time that the water plant needs an expensive valve fixed or something of that nature, they come to Rich. They put together a proposal. Sometimes it needs a bid because it's too expensive. It comes to us. We read it. There's been times where we've said, "Can you go back and take another look at how this was proposed?" But for the majority of times, it's proposed quite well. We bid it out. We get the bid. They fix the part. So it's not like we're just keep dumping them hundreds of thousands of dollars that we can't track, that we don't know what they're doing. United Water is contracted to maintain, and we approve pretty much everything. Rich will approve it, or we will approve it, depending on the cost. So there's no disappearing money and where did it go and what did you do with it.
Just as an aside too, it's a few years back, we amended United Water's contract. Before it was adjusted based on a certain index. There really it was a professional labor index that wasn't as appropriate to the Alpena area as some other indices. What we did is we negotiated with them, and basically any increase in the labor costs paid to United Water are tied directly, and they're the same thing as our public works employees get. And they have not been getting 5% increases over the last several years. They've been limited to zeros and ones. And that's basically what United Water, so their labor costs to the city does not increase any more than what our labor rates increase.
And Tom asked, how we know how much we pay the contractors. Those are line items in the budget in the water and sewer. If you go in there, it says contractual services, and you can see right what we pay them every year.
And that's not labor. That's also, it's labor, but it's also maintenance, certain operational maintenance type activities that they do. Yeah, do they come back to us? Yeah, if there's an increase that comes to them, they pay all the permit fees. If there's an increase in the permit fees, they do have the ability to come back to us and request an amendment for that. Because it's money basically out of their pocket that they have to pay. So they've increased those. But, in general, the labor rates are tied to our labor rates as far as increases.
And before, I guess since I've still have it, something that was brought up several times this evening was the ready-to-serve fee, ready-to-serve charge. Explain that to me again. Now, from what I understand, it's a rate, or it's a fee that will be charged to every hookup, every person that gets a bill will pay the 5 and 5.
Every account.
Every
Every residential account.
Every residential.
Commercial accounts are based on meter size.
Well,
even
yeah.
residential would be as well.
Yeah, every account, there will be a ready-to-serve charge assigned to them based on their meter size. Somebody that has a larger demand would pay a higher ready-to-serve charge than the residential consumer. We said, I surveyed personally 29 or 39, I don't remember the exact number, communities from around the state of Michigan, and charted out what their ready-to-serve charges were that they charge for each of those size meters. And we purposely selected ready-to-serve charges that were lower, and significantly lower in many cases, than those other entities. This was a way to proportion out a portion of the rate increase so that it was covered. We cover the maintenance of, basically the maintenance of that portion to service those customers, even if they were not using water.
So if a person doesn't use water at all, if I'm leaving for 3 months, but I don't call you and tell you to shut it off, I just leave. Right now I'm going to get a minimum bill.
Correct.
Right? Whether I use a drop of water or not, as right now, I get a minimum bill.
Correct.
That's like $35.
$60.
$60?
A quarter.
I never got it. $60.
But
And
it's
that-
a quarter.
That's a quarter, yeah. And so that would still continue to be under the new rate system. It would still be a minimum.
Basically, they would get charged.
But it would be different. It would be set up on.
They'd receive 3 monthly bills of 30. If there was no usage, I believe it'd be $30 plus the billing charge.
Right.
You mean quarterly?
Yeah, excuse me, quarterly. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Monthly, it would be $10 plus that'd be about, it'd be $15.84. If there was no usage, even though they left the water on, but they had no usage, they would be billed that minimal amount. Whereas currently, if you leave the water on, but never use it, you went away for those 3 months, you're gonna be charged the 60 whatever dollars that the minimum bill, because you are charged for 6,000 gallons a quarter, whether you use it or not, currently.
Correct.
And that's been that way for years. Now we're just going to bill based on $1,000 gallon increments.
Yes.
Of usage.
And I think that's a big deal. Of everything that was proposed, that was probably the biggest deal for me. because of someone that's using very little water. Before you were using very little water and you were charged for 6,000 gallons, whether you used it or not per quarter. Now it's 1,000 gallons. That makes a big difference, because if you don't hit that threshold of 6,000 gallons, you're only paying for what you used, not the 6,000 gallons. But
And we are looking to see if it is possible with our billing system, to refine that down to less than 1,000 gallon increments. We've asked the question, we just haven't got the answers yet.
so those are my biggest points right now. I don't know if you guys how you want to discuss it, where you want to go with it.
Oh, it's up to you, Mayor, if you just want to go around or
well,
how you want to do it.
You know what I proposed last week?
Well, I wanted to touch on a little bit of what Mike proposed last week. Because Mike did ask last week, well, it wasn't last week, it was 2 weeks ago, but at our meeting for a
phased in.
For a phased in.
Phased in over 2 years.
Phased in over 2 years to get to the point where we want to be. Did you have time to give that a lot of consideration or any?
Well, the only thing I guess would be is that it isn't something where we can simply slice it down the middle and say it's a 50-50. Because the rate is composed of two components, one a per 1,000 gallon rate, and the commodity charge, the other is the ready to serve and the building charge, which are fixed. So it might be where we could, take the one by half. If you wanted to, the commodity charge, the per 1,000 gallon rate, and then leave the ready to serve charge, which we feel is important for the reasons Rich mentioned, and of course the billing charge has to stay there. And so maybe it would be I have no hard number, but that could be maybe a 60% of the total the first year, 40% the second. I don't know.
In my original proposal too, and I think I brought this up last week, is I was proposing a $2.50 for water, $2.50 for sewer to start in year one, effective April 1st, and then with the water rates basically going to $4.56 per thousand versus the $4.99 is proposed, splitting the difference of what we're proposing, cutting it in half this year, half next year, to get us to that point. The $2.92 per water per sewer, the $5.84 currently, myself, I agree, that can stay there, and it's not outrageous, because as I check my power bill and my DTE bill, it's $7.50 for Alpena Power and it's $10.50 for DTE. Those are just your billing charges. The ready to serve charge, the reason I left that on there is because when I looked at my other bills, when you pay for power, you have an energy charge. That's basically what you're using. And if you look on your bill, you're also paying a distribution charge. It's equal to the energy charge that you're using. So they're paying for their distribution charge that way. And this is what, our ready to serve charges. So when I looked at everything, and I looked at it from my business perspective, and then again, I don't run GM. I run a small conveyor company here in town. So when I looked at it, I proposed this because I was struggling with what I call the fourth factor, which is citizens' ability to pay. And my thoughts are simply this. It's like we didn't create these within just a couple of years. We have to get to these rates to be able to maintain the system and improve our capital improvements. But I like the idea of phasing it in just for the fact that we could get there eventually, but at first it would give everyone time to adjust with the monthly billing and with all the proposed rates. So just to be clear on what I did propose last week when staff did the presentation on this.
If I could, just a couple of comments to that. The one thing, and I've blown this up, this operation and maintenance charge per 1,000 gallons, $3 for water, $3.34 for sewer. And that generates $3,186,000. If you go back here, you know, we took, these are this year's average plus our projections out into the future, which we're doing through the budget process. And that, here it's $2.99, but that $3.34 basically pays for the operation and maintenance. Okay, if you look at the debt up here, 75 cents for debt. Let me zoom in on this one. Sorry, thought it zoomed into on all the screens, but didn't. You've got 75 cents for debt in the water and 81 cents for debt in the sewer. And that, you know, that's based on volumes or 1,000 gallon units consumed. And take your total O&M and your total debt expense and divide it by those volumes. It calculates out to these numbers. When you put it into the spreadsheet, that $3 and that $3.34 or the 75 cents and 81, based on the volume, the sales volume, that just covers the O&M and maintenance. So if you cut that in half, if you cut any increase in those commodity charges in half, to be able to pay our O&M and debt, we're going to have to take that money from someplace else. The factors, I mean, the factors that are, I don't want to say variable, but, you know, infrastructure maintenance charge per 1,000 gallons, $1.20 for water, $1.20 for sewer. Those were inserted in there to achieve that $1.9 million. You know, that's about the only thing. Obviously, council can adjust any number in here. Problem is, if you take it away from O&M and maintenance, I got to rob Peter to pay Paul, because I do have O&M and debt costs that I have to cover. So, you know, if it's a matter of reducing the increase down, it's going to take away from that $1.9 million that's available. Anything that we do to lower the rates is going to reduce that 1.952.
And I understand that. I understand that. I'm just saying that I understand that the 1.9, and I said this last week, this is where we have to get. I understand and agree with that. All the backlog of maintenance that we talked about and everything we went over in projects, and you know, the other fact that I think we should make out here too is all the repairs that you do as things break. It's like your car, is the way I was looking at it. I would rather maintain my car. You know, it's much less expensive than go in and continuously repair something that I let go too long and it breaks. I get that. But, you know, yes, the first year we wouldn't generate the 1.9. I understand that. But by that second year, we would be generating the 1.9 under my proposal. Because I do understand that that's where we need to get. You know, that's a start. And I understand that's not the end, but that's a start. I'm just saying that little bit of a difference going basically, and I used a 49% example last year, introducing that at 25 and 24, I think would be even more palatable, because it's like, have we exhausted everything possible to ease the burden on the citizens? And that's what I struggled with, and that's why I proposed it, is because that was the thing that I was struggling with the most, that I feel that there was one other thing that we could do to make it more palatable. So that's just my proposal.
Just as, I mean, if you elected to cut the rate of surcharge in half, basically you plan on cutting about $335, just short of $340,000 out of there. So that, and then you're down from not 1.95 down to 1.3 roughly, or 1.6 million. And then if we do have reductions, you know, 10% reduction in volumes, that's good. That could be as high as 1.9 or $190,000. Those are just the things that we looked at in this whole scenario. And it wasn't, if it was just cut and dried, it wouldn't have taken all this time.
Yeah, the one thing that hasn't come through, and we may be wrong in the end, but we're pretty much assuming that if you did approve this and it was implemented, that we would see usage drop probably 10%. It's just natural what people will do. Now, at some point, also it's natural that will bottom out, and then you may see it begin to creep back up. People start going back into their old habits. But that initially, and that's where, the 190,000 additional. So automatically, we're down to 1.72 if we have that. There are no easy answers. We understand that. And there are probably as many different scenarios as there are stars in the sky that in terms of that the council or staff could work out and council could look at and decide, what they want to do. Ultimately, in the end, we as staff will present, as we have, what we feel is our best case of what we feel is needed. But whatever is decided by council is what we will implement.
That's why part of my proposal too is to implement it, if I did, at the 456 per thousand, and then put it back to staff to make that like a cap. So you could, make your operation.
I guess, just so I understand that, when you say that is combined for both water and sewer?
No, that's 456 for the water.
Oh, okay, for
I'm
the
just
water.
basically taking,
Big
we're at
bang,
418 and you want to go to
Okay, you're just
499.
you're cutting
I'm
that in
saying
half.
within
And
2
then-
years implementation versus going
And then
right
the
to the
same with the sewer
499.
doing the same thing?
Yes, sir.
Taking the increase and basically cutting the increase in half?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. I looked
Understood.
at the numbers on it, and that's where my proposal was.
Well, the issue that I've got with that is that if you can justify by the numbers, this is your operating and maintenance cost. Historically, this is how much it costs to operate and maintain the system. Not making any huge improvements, just operate and maintenance. How can we literally charge people half of what it costs
Well, it
to
won't be
operate
half.
and maintain
It
the
won't be
system?
half.
It wouldn't be,
Half
it wouldn't be.
of
bad.
Well,
the
it would be
increase.
half.
Yeah,
Half
it's-
of
half of the-
I'm not proposing to cut everything in half,
half of
no,
the-
no.
okay,
No,
don't do
I
that.
understand what.
Part of it.
I'm saying, I know we've got to get here. I think we can
Okay.
implement at a slower pace than what staff is
Well,
proposing.
and I guess I just, I can understand the rate of serve charge. The rate of serve charge wasn't calculated as part of the operating and maintenance. The rate of serve charge was calculated as revenue for the improvement plan and such.
It's all lumped together,
It's all-
and it's all part of, the total revenue, and then once we take out the expenses, what's left is our capital usage. Since we've already set the O&M and the debt, you're right, it would fall in. If for any reason the O&M went up, we'd probably be taking part of that ready to serve charge to cover that. Or if debt, went higher for whatever reason, we went out and bonded more or whatever, and we needed, then that would do it. So it's kind of a flexible, it's a flat rate, but in terms of where it goes, it's all flexible. We do look at it, even though money's going in from water and from sewer, we don't necessarily look at it that it's a 50-50 split, because even now, some years we spend much more on water than we do on sewer, and vice versa on other years. So it's where the needs are. It isn't a matter that, we've got this much for water, this much for sewer, and that's it. It's where the needs are, and then we.
Right, but we do have this much for debt, this much
Right.
for
And-
operating maintenance.
And
this
those
much-
we cannot.
And I just don't see how we can, just take the number that, unless I just misunderstand, and which is, explain to me if not, but you're proposing 490 something, you just moved it over.
Sorry.
Yeah, reducing that.
You're
Reducing that
proposing
495.
495, and that is the operating and debt.
That's the.
But that also includes the capital.
Yeah, it includes the
There's the capital commodity charge.
So my
in there as
first
well.
year would be
Okay.
$4.56, and if we have to have the operational at 3 and the debt service at 75 cents, then it comes off of the infrastructure maintenance charge of $1.20.
That's
It would
correct.
come off of that the
And
first
it-
year.
And it would.
Yes,
it would.
because,
Because you can't take it
from
off.
my
You have to
discussions
pay
with
the-
staff, that's where it would come.
That's where it would come from.
Yep, and that would
It would reduce
be-
our capital perhaps to,
Yep.
1.6, 1.5, I don't know. We'd have
Yep.
to do the calculations.
And your
determine.
$2.50 for water, and that would reduce the capital for infrastructure in that first year.
Right, and the same would
And
apply
and
for
as
the
of,
sewer.
the second part of the proposal would be an automatic on April 1st, 2015, we go to these rates. From everything that I've looked at, generation of 1.9 is where, we need to start at and where we need to do, to just catch up on what currently is on those maintenance log.
That's the 43 cents reduction in the water brings us down to 1.722.
What happens then when you reduce and split the increase on sewer?
That's what I got to figure out what part of it is.
I'll ask a more general question about that. I think the phase-in approach certainly makes it sound more palatable in the short term. Ultimately, it's still going to end up, at that higher rate. And I don't want it to appear to be a ruse at all. I guess my main concern is if we split it, are we going to get further behind to the point that we end up charging more in the end?
Yeah.
I mean, if we don't get the revenue we need the first year, are we going to get behind and then have to come and say, wait a minute, we're really going to charge more to get to that 1.9 or not?
You've done a 3-year average, so our costs are based on a 3-year average of the next 3 years. So we feel fairly confident on those by charging the rate we do for O&M and the debt on what that is. We're going to have less. We will collect less capital. Yes, we won't be able to do the same amount of upgrades, improvements, replacement that we would otherwise have. We would be at that number the next year. So we're going to fall short by let's just say $300,000 to $400,000. Okay, basically 300,000.
Yeah, 195 down to 166.
So we're a little over 300,000, $320,000. We're going to be
okay. If you took the ready to serve charges down to
be
half,
another 300,000.
Yeah, so you're not going to be down 600,000, which my figures were about 1.1.
Yeah, and then we're basically where we're at now, because we're generally looking at somewhere $1 million, maybe a little less. So we're not really any different than where we're at now. If we did that, if we not only have the increase on the commodity charges, but also have the ready-to-serve charges as well for that first year.
It was my proposal.
It would be significant.
It was an aggressive phase-in, but it was a phase-in. And you've been around me since the beginning, when I said this is what I've always said that I would approve.
I think what we would rather on that, rather than, if that's to be considered, is that we would like to be able to have staff go back and take a look at all those numbers to what, and then come back and say, yes, we can go with that, or if we offer something else, then the council can consider it as a different phase. And deal with that at a future date, at the next meeting, not a future date, the next meeting.
And maybe go back to some general issues. So people are getting restless, and then we can kind of come back and how exactly we want to do it. Just a couple things I know, and the one thing that's encouraging is that it seems to me from people that were here and emails and phone calls, I think the public's got a pretty good understanding that we need more revenue to maintain our systems. I heard that a couple times tonight, and so it's positive to hear. Another thing that I hear that is I find a little ironic is a lot of comments kind of center on, well, if you cared about the people of Alpena, you wouldn't do this. If you cared about our community, you wouldn't do this. My comment is that if we didn't care, we wouldn't do it. We'd just say, let's take the easy route, make everybody happy, nobody get pissed off, and we'll just keep things how they are. The reason we look at raising the rates is because we do care about this community, and we do care about the people here. And I think to a person up here, we know that we have to continue to invest in the community. And we've got a lot of comments that individual bills is not going to be pretty. I'm a 20,000 gallon user. I've got a family of 6. I ain't going to be pretty either at my house. I understand that. But I look at, we just get this tenor that, well, we don't want to pay for it, but we understand. And I get that. I don't want to pay for it either. But for all of us, if we don't invest in our system, we don't pay for it, we don't pitch in, we're going to have bigger issues down the road. You had one gentleman mention, might not want to invest in Alpena because of higher rates. Companies aren't going to want to invest if our infrastructure's falling apart either. And I think that's probably the first thing they look at. I would ask Rich, but just real quick to put up the rate comparison with the other communities real quick. I think a lot of the tension is because of the jump, because we're taking such a huge jump to go from third cheapest to, little past middle of the pack there. What we're proposing is $3 a month more than what the township pays right now. It's not an astronomical fee. It's what the township pays currently. Now, that's not what we charge the township. It's our charge plus what they tack on. But our proposal will be right there at Alpena Township. So I think the struggle is where we have such a low rate now that we're trying to jump, and not so much the rate itself. If we had been putting in increases over the past few decades that we probably should have been doing, this wouldn't be an issue. We'd be probably in line with some of these other communities where our proposal is already, and it wouldn't be there. And I get too specifically about why we've been at such a low rate, but so I'm glad that people understand we need to do something. We certainly understand that people don't want to pay it. We don't want to pay it either. But we can't pay it with nothing. We have to find some way to increase this revenue stream, to make those types of proposals. And again, I would still go back to looking at the CIP and look at the amount of projects that we can't do, that we don't get to. In the long run, that does nobody any good. So, one other thing that kind of got thrown out, but we didn't spend a lot of time on, is in our permit process, we do have to prove that we make enough money to pay for our system or we don't get the permits. If that process came in this year, we couldn't prove it. I think we have a year and a half.
Basically, when the permit comes into place, that will be a condition of our permit. And before the next renewal, we have to provide all that justification. And quite frankly, and Mike, step in here if I'm misspeak, if we don't do it, they have the ability to step in and do it on our behalf.
But we still pay for it.
Yeah, but we still pay.
What he means by our behalf is that don't force us to take out the money to do it. And one gentleman earlier spoke quite a bit. He's still back there. As an alternative, we can bond stuff if that's the right term for it. But we raise rates to pay for the bonds anyway. It would be the same if the permit process came along and they said, hey, you have to do this. You're taking out the loans whether you want to or not, or the bonds. In order to pay those, we'd have to raise the rates. So to maintain our current system, we're going to have to get the money from somewhere. And if it's through rate increases, that's tough on everybody. If it's through bonding, then we have to raise the increase to pay the bond anyway. So it's still going to come down the road. Nobody up here wants it. Nobody up here likes it. And I would go back to one of my first comments is if the township residents, the city residents, and this community didn't matter and wasn't important, we wouldn't do it. We'd just take the easy way out, and everybody be happy with us for 5-10 years down the road until we run into bigger problems. So, I hope people understand we're part of the community too. We pay the bills too. Every individual up here does that, and it stinks, and this is no fun for anybody. And hopefully we can find a way to get this out here that doesn't put burdens on people. And one thing I wanted to ask Mike is, other utilities do have some programs for people on fixed incomes or that have trouble paying. Is there anything that United Water could look at in terms of helping those populations where there is this big jump? Obviously.
I haven't really researched that. I do know that there are communities that give a discount for seniors. We try to work with people as much as we can. We give them payment options. We will hold off shutting people off as long as we're getting a commitment that they're going to pay, and they do keep up with that commitment. We're very flexible. And I just wanted to elaborate a little bit on the language going into the permit for the asset management plan. Basically, EPA is doing that because there are communities that are in the exact same situation that we're in. They haven't planned for the future. And because they haven't planned for the future, they're experiencing a lot of failures. Those failures can result in permit non-compliance issues. So basically, they want that in the permit so that communities realize that they have a commitment, not only to the customers, but to the environment and the water that everyone shares. And it will go into the permit. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to force communities to live up to that commitment. But I guarantee that if you start violating your permit, they will be down on you hard to make sure that you have the funding to fill that need that you have for your infrastructure improvements. And I think, there was a time when federal government invested a lot of money in communities to build facilities. And they expected communities to keep up with the infrastructure and not get into a situation where they're going to violate the permit. And unfortunately, people haven't had the foresight to do that because it wasn't politically correct or whatever the motivation was or the reason. But that's why that language will be going into permits so that they have an extra stick to wield if communities don't support the system the way that they need to.
Mike, I'm not sure what you said, but you sounded like you said that communities that don't plan like us. We have planned.
We have planned.
We do that. We do it every year with the CIP. The funding for it is where we've been lacking. But in terms of knowing what our needs are, which a lot of communities don't even do that, I don't know how many are shocked to the fact that we have a CIP that consists of 300 and some projects, of which most of them are engineering between water, sewer, and streets. And most communities, even bigger than us, never do this at all. And so we do recognize whatever the needs, we set those needs out. It's just a matter of how do you pay for them. And that's been the issue over the years. It isn't a matter of we've just been burying our head in the sand and ignoring the issues, because they're there and we've been doing this for 20 to 25 years, since well before I got here, in terms of doing an annual CIP. So we have done a good job.
We have done an excellent job, and I think the sad part about it is we've planned, but we haven't planned well enough to handle the things like the shore wall leaking. Those are things that you really can't plan because it's a tank that's buried. You can't see the condition of the tank until you actually start seeing it leak.
Problem.
You don't know. So it's hard to plan for those things.
Some things you just can't plan for.
Correct.
But those that we do know are all there. We do plan, and we do a very good job of that. It's just a matter of dollars and cents. And that's what we're dealing with right now.
I would like to respond to anybody who thinks that we don't plan, that we don't care. We wouldn't be here if we didn't care. And I think you know that for sure. But it is council's responsibility to make sure that we have proper oversight of the city's utilities, and that we have an obligation to serve our the residents of this city in a fiscally responsible fashion, both in the short and the long term. We're not going to live forever. We're not going to be here forever. Down the road, our children and our grandchildren are going to be here. Mike, our grandchildren are going to be here. The rates must be adequate to provide for healthy, good water. If you've ever been to a community that didn't have good water, then you know what that's like. And we have to provide and have a plan for capital improvement, which must be balanced with what our residents can bear. At the same time, we cannot stifle economic development. There is a fine line for us somewhere. I would suggest that after taking in all this information, and we've all taken copious notes, and we understand, we get it, we're in the same fix you're in, I would suggest we go back to the drawing board and get creative and try to find a way. I don't know if your plan is the answer, to be honest, I don't see how you can cut that much out of the budget and expect to fix anything. I just don't get that. But that's a lot of money to cut when we have the CIP plan that we have. It's necessary and it's huge. But I suggest we go back to the drawing board, that we all negotiate in good faith for our respective communities who are neighbors, friends, and relatives, and that we do it quickly. That's it.
What else would you like to see when you say, you mentioned that, that we need to be more, you used a term just now, and now
Creative.
Creative. Thank you. It has. I'm sorry.
You're right.
But I've literally seen like 30 different spreadsheets of different creative ideas, and it really all comes down to how much can someone bear as an increase.
How much can you bear?
So when you say, are you literally saying that you want the staff to go back and come back with something different?
Something. I think Mike's, the final number for Mike's is too low. It's too low, because down the road is, just as you said, Sean, it's gonna come back and bite us, because we're gonna raise it. Then it would have, I don't know if we'll be here, but eventually somebody is really gonna bite the bullet. Much worse than this. If we take it that low now, I maybe there's a way to massage it and have it a little bit better.
You understand
Maybe,
mine isn't.
I certainly understand.
That it's
I
not
understand
forever.
your program. That's not
Good.
forever. But again, fixed income's fixed income. How is fixed income going to change next year? If it's fixed, it's fixed. So there's got to be a way to get at least most of the cash that the city needs right now, and in the future, ensure that the citizens don't take the bite that they may take if we don't do something now, which is our job.
Is it my turn?
Well, we didn't let you talk about you.
We're going down the road.
This is difficult. This is difficult for everybody. This isn't something that just happened. This has been happening over at least the last 12 years. They knew there was going to be a shortfall. But you can see from the chart that Alpena has been historically paying low water and sewer rates. Past councils, that they enjoyed that. The consumers enjoyed that. We can't do that anymore. If you look at this, if you look at the chart, other communities charge much more than what we're going to charge because they realize that they need the money for their infrastructure to maintain the system. Well, you can shake your head all you want, but if I was sitting where you were sitting, I would probably doing the same thing. But I'm sitting here, and I have a responsibility sitting here to do what's in the best interest of everyone in the city. Everyone. That means somebody on the north side whose system might not be the best, or somebody else. I have to look out for everybody, not just the people whose system is working fine.
I'm shaking my head because of the city comparisons. My son lives in Midland. He paid $60 a quarter. I talked to him Saturday for 14,000 gallons.
I don't normally do that, but we.
That was a rebuttal.
Yeah.
That's fine.
So
That's
we,
fine.
and even as council, we have to be careful not to address anyone specifically. And I don't know whether Susan meant to or not.
Cindy,
I'm sorry.
That's fine.
I know Susan didn't mean to.
Maybe I didn't eat enough today out of it. But yeah, please please don't respond. We can't get in a debate this evening at this point, but please carry on. Cindy, I'm sorry.
But anyway, this is, the whole point is, this is difficult, and the rates do have to go up. Whatever we decide here tonight, whether we send it back to staff, it's not gonna be easy, and it's not gonna be pretty on anybody. And we have to pay those rates just like you do. But it's for, we have to look out for everyone in the system, everyone. We have to be able to maintain our system and our plants and our water towers. It's an expensive process.
So the proposal from Councilman Nowak was, you showed that already, am I right? Or
We showed
did you
the-
pull it out of just water?
No, but basically what I
Or
did
air, you know.
is I reduced the infrastructure maintenance charge. Those were each 120. I reduced this by 43 cents, which was half of the difference between the existing rate and the proposed rates. I reduced this by 18 cents, which is half the difference between the existing rates and the proposed rates. Run from 240 down to 179. And that brings us down to 1.636.
Okay.
Now,
That's with the ready to serve charges remaining as they are.
as it is.
As they propose, as we're proposing. If we cut the other, we're down to basically just a little more than what we are now.
I can do that very quickly.
Because it's gonna knock 338,000 off. Roughly.
You're down to 1.3.
Well,
And then,
Can I-
if you have a
1.3
10% reduction, that's
And if we do
190.
have a 10% reduction, you're looking at basically a hair over $1 million.
And that shows what that has done to our bottom line. That doesn't, I don't know if that's really given me and the audience a pretty good picture of what that's gonna do to their bill, because we could say, yeah, that
Well, no,
sounds
I mean,
great.
that we can show. It's hard just to do it quickly here.
And I get that.
I would suggest, if you want us to look at that, and that's the consensus of the council, give it back to us. We'll run some, what those are, and then, like we showed before, an average bill at those different rates, how it's impacted, that we can do. We just want to make sure that we're punching the right numbers and not hitting something here now that shows up and then we find out there was a mistake because it's done.
Please don't take these numbers as gospel.
Yeah.
It's very close to exactly what I figured
Right.
when I went through it myself.
But we would like to, be able to go through it, and then and I guess at that point, we'll come back with our own recommendation, whether, no, we should leave it as it is, or if we're gonna reduce it, this is how we recommend. It may be what you're suggesting, Mike, or it may be something else. But we'll have all the scenarios. We can easily have those ready for you in 2 weeks. To look at.
Next
And that's-
council meeting.
On a phase and for over 2 years,
over a
which is
2-year
the
second, yes.
intent. Now, what it would probably do, because we're putting, delaying 2 weeks, is we'd probably be looking at implementation, those becoming effective probably May 1st rather than April 1st. So it'll be May and May.
Only for the simple fact that, Mike, with the billing process, there's certain obligations and commitments and timeframes that he has to abide by, and we need to get numbers to him, and he needs to get the information. So, yeah, the earliest it would be May for a start date. Is that reasonable, Mike?
It's a target.
I like targets.
The target was April, so if we could commit to April, I think we can do it.
Well, I think it would just be hard with the fact that we wouldn't be approving them until the 17th of March and then suddenly have them go in effect on April 1st. I think at least holding off till May 1st would make more sense.
I think that's fine. We've been discussing this since like June of 2012, for some of us. And so, I hope that people can appreciate that we started this conversation a year and 6 months ago, I think, seems like.
Well, it was in-
So, that was when the conversation started, and then we hired Zubek to come in, if I don't have that whole word right, their whole title, Goslin Zubek. That was a study that the council made a right decision to have that study. It's a common study that utilities do, and we hadn't had one done in, and I'm not sure how long, recent memory. And so we had that done. They're a very reputable company in the industry of water and sewer. So, they did that. They gave us some really good information to start with, and we've been doing our best to take our time to get through this, to do this correctly, not only with the citizens and residents of the city, but the residents of the township and the trustees of the township. We're quite honestly doing our best not to jump into this at any quick rate in order to make sure that we've made the right decision, but we are going to have to make a decision at some point. I think I'm going to struggle with just like I said, knowing if we phase into this, what phase can people absorb? I don't know from one day to the next. People call me a lot. People actually call me quite a bit, thinking that I have something to do with the power company. And now I guess I do. But people call me when they have issues with the power company, that they've been shut off, or that they've been, or that they can't pay their bills anymore. And so I kind of do a little bit of what I would do if it was us. We run the water company, but we don't. And so I contact the power company, and there are ways in this community to help you pay your bills, to help you pay your utilities. And it's not directly through the power company. I have learned that a lot of these are with the community center with, there's several of them. But there's assistance out there for paying your bills if you end up in a situation where you can't pay your utility bills. There is assistance out there. I don't believe it's directly through the utility, or it's certainly not through the government of our government of taxpayers, but there are other avenues. But when it comes right down to what people can afford, I'm going to have trouble with that. We did probably the best thing that we've done for senior residents and those on a fixed income is dropping the 6,000 gallon minimum. And I'm telling you that just from my perspective, if you were using 2,000 gallons per quarter today, and once we implement the no $6,000 rate, you were paying for 6,000 gallons before, and now you won't be. Under this new structured system, you'll be paying for exactly what you use if it's 2,000 gallons or 3,000 gallons. So there are people out there that have been paying more. We met them on my first day. I met a couple. I laughed because she smacked Mike with her bill, and it reminded me that she didn't want to use more water for what she was paying. She wanted to pay less for the water that she was actually using, or pay for the water she was actually using. And so we've gotten to that point. So those users will see a decrease in their bill, or at least it'll offset some of the increase that we're going to see. Us that are up into the 15,000 gallon quarter. So I'd like to, I guess, see how Mike's suggestions are going to affect the actual bill to the user. I'd like to see, and I think some of the people that came in this evening would also like to see, if it's not going to be too difficult, is, and I understand that the ready-to-serve charge is something that a lot of utilities are going to, or have been for quite some time, and you and Mike have done that and looked over it. But part of the issue that I have with the ready-to-use charge, or ready-to-serve charge, is that I can't control that as a user. I can control how much water I use. I can shut the hot water off well, it's just me and my wife now, so she probably wouldn't like that. You know, you can impact how much water and how long your showers last and how often you do dishes and how often you do wash your car and things. You can make those adjustments, and you will. I will, when this rate goes in. And so, but the rate of surcharge, it doesn't matter. I can't, and I know we can't regulate everything, but if as a user I knew that even my rate of surcharge might be a little bit less if I use, 1,000 gallons less this month, then that could have a pretty big impact. So you discuss the fact that that revenue has to come, and part of it's from that charge. Is it possible to put that charge into an equation just like the rest of the rates, so at least I can control that?
Well,
And I don't feel like I'm just
You
being-
could eliminate it and increase something else. The thing is if somebody does indeed turn off, or in this case just leaves and doesn't use anything, they're paying nothing. Even though that water is there running by their home, and in fact is in their line, but it's not flowing through the meter anymore because they're not using it and turning on the tap, they won't pay anything at all for the service. Even though we still, in one way or another, we got to keep that water flowing by them and make sure that everything is operating. They don't pay if they're not there and not utilizing. That's what the ready to serve charge is intended for, is that there is a cost just to keep, the fact that infrastructure is there and that it operates. And it is ready to serve you whenever you need it. And that's what the charge is for. And it's, as Rich said, and we could probably bring and provide the council what other communities are charging, in his survey of what he has, and you can see, we have kept it extremely low compared to what many have done. All those are options, but they have their impacts one way or another. And obviously, if we have a reduction in usage, as you said, there will be, if we do everything on a commodity per 1,000 gallon charge other than the billing, then everything will be impacted by any reduction in usage. At least with the ready to serve, we have at least a set amount of revenue that we know we will have, no matter what the usage is. I would, and my understanding is if you would so desire, is to make a motion to refer back to staff, and we'll, based on the input provided by council tonight, we'll present the various scenarios back at the next meeting for your consideration.
Hang on. No, I was gonna ask Mike if you'd tack on a 3-year phase in too, just so we could look at the difference between the two.
Pardon me?
If you would tack on in your motion to staff to ask for a plan for a 2-year phase in and a 3-year.
Okay.
Just so we'd have something to.
Yeah, the 2-year phase in versus the 2-year phase in that I proposed.
It does, yeah, we can,
Yep.
that's easy enough to do, it's just putting the numbers in.
Take this thing.
And we'll see what the impact is. It's easy for you.
So moved.
That's just delegating.
So I would make that motion.
Okay.
To refer back to staff, to look at a 2-year phase-in plan as presented by myself, and to also look at a 3-year phase-in plan as suggested by Councilman Sexton. Mayor Pro Tem Sexton.
So we're putting a 3-year with a third and a third and a third?
Or something.
Whatever works out.
Whatever works out.
Yes. Go ahead and.
Or doesn't work out.
Well, who seconded that?
That's the motion.
That's the motion.
Wasn't me, it was
I'll second.
I guess what I would look at doing is I could do it a third, and then I may also look at 60, 80, 100, some different scenarios to see what those are. I mean, it's easy enough to do, because Craig told me to do it. It's easy enough to do. It's just a matter of putting it in, figuring out, and then I'll have to put a table together to show what all those are.
And then certainly keep in mind that I'm sure you will, but if you can give us an idea of by the time we get to that third year, with what Susan had said about having to charge more, maybe it was Sean, about, okay, you know, we need $60 today, but 3 years from now, that $60 is going to be $75. So,
Well, and the other thing that we've got to realize, and I think it's something we maybe need to look at, is that when we do, if we have these, there are still going to need to be basically cost of doing business, cost of living increases. There may be 2%, 3%, 4%, whatever, besides these, because costs continue to go up. And we're gonna need just to be able to maintain operations, maintenance, those types of things to cover those costs. So we'll need to show that, you know, if we do, let's say a 2-year, and it's somewhere around 50 or 60% that first time. The second time, there would be that 50, but there may also be another additional 3 or 5, whatever, you know, we're looking at on our costs, added on. But we will show that, so you'll see it, and it's not gonna be any surprise.
yeah, you have to, because I was just looking at a chart this afternoon that's in the Zubik study that showed all of our increased rates from 2003 until 2013 every year. So there was a couple of years where there was none at all, and then since I've been here, we've done 5 and 10, I think twice, at least twice now, 5%, 10% increases. And that has, I mean, that hardly just doesn't even, I don't even know what it does.
You just wait for prices to go up when you do that.
Yeah.
We have done that. If you notice,
Trading water.
each year throughout this, we are showing an increase, an inflationary increase in
Okay, so maybe
those
we've already
O&Ms.
done
We've
that.
already
Okay.
accounted for those.
Okay, good.
And then what we did is we utilized the average so that if everything falls the way it should, first year you should make a few more dollars, second year you should be even, the third year you're gonna lose a few dollars.
Exactly.
You know, it's kind of the way it works.
So maybe those are already there.
And the intention is that when we do this next budget cycle, the next year will be added on, the first year will fall off, and it's gonna be a running 3-year average.
Did you catch all that, Karen?
No. My memory's out. Nowak,
Yes.
Sexton,
Yes.
Walagora,
Aye.
Johnson,
Yes.
Nielsen.
Yes.
All right. We've only got one thing left on the agenda this evening is communications and petitions for the Target Alpena annual budget request. Karen, were you going to read that?
Yes, I can read it, and it's a bad night to be in the
I
audience.
made fun of me. I had to sit the whole time.
If you have questions. This is from Jim Clarich and Jackie Krawcheck. We are very appreciative of the funding that the city has provided us with over the past year. As I'm certain you'll agree, our organization's commitment to the improvement of the economic vitality of our region is already being felt across the area. Our improving unemployment rates, development opportunities, and increases in area investment are just some of the examples of the positive benchmarks our actions have influenced over the past year. In addition to our continuous efforts to maximize the potential of our primary business sectors, we've also been able to achieve additional goals, such as to develop meaningful relationships with in-state and out-of-state organizations and individuals who had the expertise and networks required to assist us in accelerating our primary objectives. This past year, we have also elected to chair the 11-county NEMCOG Regional Collaborative Development Council, and also asked to serve on the Northeast Michigan Works Economic Development Board. Both of these opportunities will help us to communicate and address Northeast Michigan's need for a broader vision and broader sense of urgency. We are pleased with the progress that we have made in 2013 and 14 and look forward to continuing to provide ever-increasing value to our region. We are well aware of the financial uncertainty that most units of government are facing, but respectfully request that you look favorably on our request to extend the $40,000 investment that you provided last year through fiscal year 2015. And they're here in the audience if you have questions.
The intent will be referred to staff as part of the budget process, right, as other requests.
Yeah, and we did like with the hunt, we would receive and file.
Sure.
I would move that we receive and file.
You should ask him a question.
Oh, should I ask him a question? Okay. Should I ask a question?
What day?
Do you usually stay up this late?
Are you happy?
That's the question.
We had a motion?
Yes. Receive and file, yeah.
Second.
Okay. Sexton?
Yes.
Walagora?
Aye.
Johnson? Nielsen?
Yes.
Noah?
Yes. I move we adjourn.
Second.
You are watching All About Alpena.